Hello Popcorn Junkies, welcome to this review of Send Help. This is a new film by Sam Raimi. He did some of the, he did Evil Dead, he did some of the Spider-Man films. He made a brilliant film back in 1998 called A Simple Plan. Please do check it out. It is fantastic. Anyway, this is Send Help. It's billed as a comedy horror, though I have to confess I went into this not knowing the extent to which it was a comedy horror. I went in expecting a sort of brutal body horror type thing and wasn't expecting the lightness of touch and the breeziness of delivery, if I'm honest. It stars Rachel McAdams. Really, it's a two-header. Rachel McAdams and Dylan O'Brien. Now, Rachel McAdams plays a sort of slightly frumpy, librarian-like strategist within a company. She's quite eccentric. She makes her own packed lunches. She's got a pet parrot or a pet budgie at home. She's kind of incredibly chatty. She doesn't read the room. She wants to be popular with everyone, but she tries too hard. She's one of those people who tries too hard, and everyone else who's a bit of a mean boy and a mean girl in the office just goes, oh God, can we just navigate around it? The kind of woman who would invite herself to a kind of party or to a drink session after work, and no one else really wanted her there. So you're kind of, it's telegraphed very obviously. And this was my first concern with this film was, I'm a big fan of Rachel McAdams. But I found, to be honest with you, her overperformance of frumpiness kind of left me feeling like, this film is trying too hard to be too sort of stereotypically obvious. And I have to say, I think the whole film is incredibly kitsch and predictable and overbearing. But then it's a weird film, this, because about 20 minutes into watching it, or 30 minutes into watching it, I then began to think, oh, okay, well, let's just hand oneself over to it. At first, it felt like a really bad M. Night Shyamalan film, of which there are many bad M. Night Shyamalan films, in which, you know, the story arc, the storytelling, it's all really well signposted. You know, Dylan O'Brien is a really nasty boss. He's misogynistic. He's only interested in the boys. He's only interested in promoting his mate who he can play golf with. He's only interested in hiring young, attractive women to be his assistant because maybe they'll do more. They'll go beyond it. They'll go over and beyond what the job requires in order to keep him happy and all the rest of it. And so you sort of, the setup is an obvious one. Dylan O'Brien, nasty fucker of a boss, exploitative. He's got a sort of sinister side to him too. There's one moment where, which I thought was quite funny, and I quite liked stylistically the way they did it, where Rachel McAdams had a bit of tuna and mayo sandwich left on her lip, and the camera goes into great big macro close-ups of that, of his eyes seeing it, of the nose sniffing it. So we're forced into a place of actually finding Rachel McAdams' character quite repulsive, and I think the film puts us in that position too. She, you know, we're forced into thinking, wow, she's a bit much, she's too much, and she's just not particularly pleasant. And I actually think all the way through the film there are huge questions to be asked of the characterization of Rachel McAdams' character, because it leans on some pretty old, tired, stereotypical tropes of slightly frumpy woman who would never in a month of Sundays attract anyone, and then across the arc of the film, given what happens after their airplane crashes, she becomes more and more beautiful, and then as she becomes more and more beautiful, she also then becomes madder and madder. So they end up going off on a business trip. She has to go along because she's good with numbers. You know, she's very bookish, and because she's so good with numbers, she's invited on this trip, and they head off on a private jet. But it's all the boys' club, it's all the clique. They're all kind of chatting away between themselves, and they stumble across, or someone sent them, or they found, or they've hacked, or they found on the system a showreel or a kind of audition tape that Rachel McAdams' character has submitted for a survival show. So, you know, to survive on an island, you know, like Survivor. And so they're watching this tape on the plane as they're flying somewhere, and they're laughing at her. I guess she sort of does all these kind of bushwhacker trials, and she builds things, and she's a bit ick. She's a bit embarrassing. She's a bit cringe. You're just like, but they're all laughing at her, and they're bullies, and they're being mean, and they're being horrible. And then suddenly the plane goes into the most awful turbulence. And the first moment in this film where I thought, okay, we're not meant to take any of this seriously. This is a complete fucking comedy horror, is when suddenly the plane is ripped in two. Many of the nasty fuckers who've been horrible to her get their faces torn off. Men in ties come to horrible ends with ties, getting caught indoors and splattered against the side of the window. Anyway, so they all crash, and there are only two survivors. There are two survivors, and that's Rachel McAdams and her horrible boss, Dylan O'Brien. And then this film turns into a curious kind of survivor film, where they're on a desert island. Robinson Crusoe-esque. Dylan O'Brien is kind of castrated. He's kind of hobbled. He's already hobbled. And it's interesting that he is hobbled. And she's sort of keeping him alive, keeping her alive, because her survival skills, which would have made her a great candidate for the survival reality show, she's been pottering around on the island trying to make things work whilst he's been out for the count for a couple of days. And what this film, a grab on this film is really, do you remember the classic Stephen King film Misery with James Caan and Kathy Bates? This is Misery, but it's, instead of in her hovel or home, it's on a desert island, and instead of the kind of male victim, if you like, being a writer, he's her horrible misogynistic boss. And rather than the crazed woman being a sort of lunatic superfan, Kathy Bates, this one is a bookish survival, passionate survival reality show wannabe who wants to prove that she can actually live this life and do this life. And I thought Rachel McAdams did a really good job of kind of letting us into that completely dislocated belief that actually it didn't matter that they were stranded. It didn't matter that they maybe needed to be rescued. It didn't matter that maybe someone somewhere was wondering where the fuck have all those people gone in that plane crash. She was just like, nah, this is the lifestyle I've always wanted, and this is what I've wanted. And actually it suits her, certainly at the beginning of their strandedness on the island, it suits her to have an immobilized and essentially metaphorically castrated boss. And so really this film becomes quite a sort of humorous, evolutionary kind of storytelling arc of her nursing him back to kind of some semblance of health and mobility, them trying to sustain themselves, and him trying to repeatedly escape. He's not pleasant, but I have to say, I mean, when I said to the girls that this film starred Dylan O'Brien, they're like, oh, Dylan O'Brien, yeah, I've never heard of him before. Dylan O'Brien is fucking hysterical. He plays the emasculated, immobilized, unable to be the big fucking bloke really well. His struggle, his realization that he has no power, his dependency on a woman, and not just any old woman, but the frumpy woman from the logistics department, is just fantastic. This has completely upset the apple cart. And so this is kind of one of those films again that plays into that, the kind of punishment of the rich. If you think of Triangle of Sadness and The Menu, he's got everything. He's a tech entrepreneur. She's just a mealy nobody, but he's dependent on her. He's got no self-sufficiency whatsoever. He can't cook himself anything. She's making sushi. She's managing to kind of store rainwater in half cups of coconut shells by putting palm leaves arcing down into them, so when the rain falls, it goes into the coconut cups. She's incredibly resilient and self-sustaining. But she goes through a process of forever punishing him, so he can't help but be horrible to her. Even when he first comes round, he can't help but be what he is in the office. And she does say at one point to him, we're no longer in the office, Bradley. And interestingly, Linda looks sort of more beautiful and more beautiful as it goes. Her skin becomes browner. She's wearing just kind of survival gear, shorts and all the stuff. And I couldn't work out if the film was asking us to kind of laugh at that convention. There were times in this where I was reminded of things like Romancing the Stone or Jewel of the Nile, was that those the ones with Michael Douglas and Kathleen Turner? She's so resourceful. She manages to make their own alcohol. And in making their own alcohol, they get so drunk, they open up to each other. They have moments where they share in their home truths of their lives. She talks about having lost her husband, or did she have some tacit kind of involvement in her husband dying because she handed him the keys when he was drink driving and he drove himself and crashed, and he talks about having a monstrous father and all the rest of it. And I thought Dylan O'Brien did a really good job of all the way through this. I was willing him. I was thinking, oh, please be real, please be authentic, please actually want to be nice to her. Not necessarily be romantic, and although it's pointed out in one instance where they have to kind of shelter in a cave at one point when their camp gets blown away and they have to sort of hunker up close to each other just for body warmth, there's no suggestion actually that they could ever have sex or that there's a romantic interest. I think they could have perhaps threaded that thought that wouldn't both of them at some point just feel a certain desperation or need for physical intimacy, but that wasn't hinted at. It wasn't, and that wasn't really spoken about. He never saw her as anything other than Linda in accounts, if you like. But anyway, she also takes him, on one instance, she takes him across the island and points at a part of the island, says, see where those two rocks are that are marked by a cross? Don't go over there, because if you go over there, it's full of stuff that could kill you. And of course what we discover is the reason she says don't go over there is it's fucking inhabited, or there's a fucking posh, expensive, built into the fucking side of the rocks Airbnb, or the kind of place that a Bond villain would have his gaff. So she's discovered that there's actually life over there, and you do see on a couple of occasions a boat coming to and from, which she sees, but does nothing to try and draw their attention, does nothing to rescue them. He's forever saying things like, well, why don't we do a fire? Why don't you create a big fire? Why don't you write help in the sand? And as the film goes on, there's a moment also of her going hunting. There's a wild boar moment where, fuck me, the amount of blood that they end up pouring all over. This is like a wild boar. It's like the living dead of wild boar. Now, and I have to say, Rachel McAdams, I thought all the way through this, her performance becomes more and more, it's an indulgent performance. I felt it was a bit too eggy at the front. It was a bit too stereotypical. I felt they were trying a bit too hard. I felt directorially, they could have reined her in a little bit more. But as she starts to find that she's got an appetite for hunting, she quite enjoys the process of the savage, bloody kill. I quite liked her kind of tipping and moving towards the Kathy Bates kind of unhingedness. But she's not like Kathy, she's not totally unreasonable. She gives him chances, and there's an incredibly funny, clever scene where she drugs him so that he can be conscious, but he can't move. And she threatens, and out of shot, you don't know whether she's doing it, she threatens to castrate him. She's going to turn him into a eunuch unless he behaves himself. And she stabs down there and she cuts and she says, we've got ourselves a bleeder here. And then she pulls up into shot the rat that she's been killing. So there are some really funny moments. There's some real kind of like bloody, disgusting gags in there. It is quite panto. I think this may well indeed develop and acquire something of a cult following. It's meant to be eggy, it's meant to be silly. It's helped along by the fact that whilst Rachel McAdams just relishes the becoming a psychopath and a sociopath, there's a sadness and a poignancy in her too. She wants to kind of be appreciated, but she really doesn't want to go back to civilization. He's incredibly good. In that scene where he thinks he's going to have his testicles cut off, I was roaring out loud with laughter. And I said this to the girls. I said his performance, almost more than Rachel McAdams, made me laugh out loud. The noises he makes as he realizes how vulnerable he is as a man, or how emasculated he is as a man. I thought that was incredibly entertaining. I thought he was a great sport. He's thoroughly unlikable. He has not a redeeming character. Every time you think, oh, maybe he's going to step towards the light and be nice and be good, he actually makes another decision and he's awful. He tries to escape on a raft. He tries to poison her. He tries to kill her. And then the film moves into the final act. And we've seen right at the beginning of the film, Bradley's fiance with her giant diamond ring. She manages to approach the island on a boat. Anyway, so Rachel McAdams manufactures a situation where essentially his fiance comes to a sticky end, and there's quite a neat dream sequence or moment where a body, a person, a creature is crawling out of the sea and their hands are clawing in the sand. I couldn't help but feel this was riffing on and referencing back to the sort of horror zombie pics of Sam Raimi's past, as this character stumbles and staggers and walks towards Rachel McAdams on the beach in the twilight sun, twilight moonlight, and you're like, oh my god, this is like literally Night of the Living Dead. And then the film just moves towards a completely surreal, over-the-top, gonzo-style denouement where he's trying to gouge her eye out. It's like literally you're seeing badly done, but kind of funny in its own way. She stabs him in the side of his stomach. They find themselves at the kind of Bond villain's Airbnb built into the side of the fucking mountain. And then we have this final scene, and of course golf is a really important thing for Bradley back in his tech entrepreneur company. Classic fucking men who like golf. I hate men who like golf. Sorry, anyone who likes golf. I hate men in ties, and I hate men who like golf. Men in ties who like golf, oh my god, do one. She takes him out, and it involves a golf club, and the final reveal at the end of this film is very neat. It's very obvious. It's very contrived. I mean, the whole film is very contrived. I mean, it's not sophisticated comedy horror. It's really quite mainstream, obvious choices made, obvious story arcs, some characterizations a little bit obvious. I do think there are questionable kind of questions to be asked, actually, about the attractiveness or the gender politics around Rachel McAdams' unhingedness. The idea of her not being that attractive and then becoming more attractive, and then actually her being an ambitious, because the end of the film you realise, oh, she's quite ambitious and quite capable too. So I think it felt like the kind of film you wouldn't at all be surprised to have discovered from 1989, with a few more kind of more sophisticated special effects from now's age. But it felt like a sort of weirdly quite dated, out of date kind of riff on a comedy horror. I thought it was lifted head and shoulders above what it was by, I have to say, Rachel McAdams from about a third of the way through. I found the first act with Rachel McAdams, it was all a bit too obvious. Everything was too obviously signposted, even as a comedy horror. It was all too obvious. We were being told we weren't allowed to do any of the heavy lifting at all. Whereas actually, once we got to the kind of the desert island, I really indulged in Dylan O'Brien. I thought was excellent once he wasn't just the horrible boss. And Rachel McAdams became much richer once she wasn't just the frumpy librarian-esque kind of not very pretty but annoying employee. If I was to score this, I think this is doing quite well at the box office. It was okay. I mean, I did laugh a lot. I did find it funny, but it's not cult. I don't think it'll be cult. I just think it's kind of, it reminded me a little bit of the Final Destination films. Is that what they are? It kind of had a similar feel to it as that, and I felt a lot of the effects and a lot of the scenes were quite clearly CGI'd, and that sort of removes a certain kind of immediacy to things. I felt some of even the beat shots were shot as top shots, so that you knew that they probably put the sand in a kind of studio and we weren't really on a beach. I didn't really feel at all times it was really on a desert island. It had that feeling of having been shot indoors and made to look outside, which I found a little bit frustrating. But all of that said, Rachel McAdams has great fun. Dylan O'Brien is great fun too. And there are some great moments in it. There are some laugh out loud moments. But if I was to score it, I'd probably give it 68 out of 100.